Hello, hello, hello. The volume is good now. We're good. We're good.
Okay.
I can hear you much better now. Seems
Okay,
like you
good.
was a little distant, but yeah. So I'm so happy that you came on
Of
and
course.
joining us today. So let me let some more people on. Give me a few minutes.
Okay. Okay.
Majority
Well, I
people
was
are
just
on already, though.
okay.
I'm just
I was
giving them
just
just
looking at your DM. I'm like, it was last July that you reached out to me. Like life is moving slow and
yes.
fast, right?
Yes, yes. Because when I DM you, was like, I don't know what I'm gonna be doing the next year. So I was
Right.
like, and then it was like all of a sudden it was like you got a couple months. It was like 3 months, and it was like it just time
It's
moves really
crazy.
fast. Yes,
It moves
time moves
really
really fast.
fast. And here
Yes,
we are.
here we are. Yes, we are here.
But
Um,
I'm honored that you reached out.
yes, I'm glad too.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
let me just start the recording and
Oh, okay.
let everyone know. Okay, so today we have Regina Robertson with us today. The book that we will be discussing is He Never Came Home. He Never Came Home, interviews, stories, and essays from daughters on life without their fathers, edited by Regina Robertson. Hopefully you guys can see that. Have a little glare going on here. But anyway, He Never Came Home is the book. Thank you, Yolanda. All
Oh,
right,
thank
so
you.
so first of all, first and foremost, welcome, welcome, welcome for taking
Thank
time out
you.
to join us for this discussion on today. So just tell us a little quick background of all that you do. Regina, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, can everyone I want to see everyone. I see S Blanche and Yolanda and Shikana, Lisa, Pepsi.
There they go. All right,
And then I
sisters.
see, and then I just see someone that says iPhone. So I just wanted to say hi to everyone. And to Tanisha,
Yes, yes, that is
Tanisha.
correct.
Okay. Well, hello everybody. Um, oh my God, where do I start? Well, I'll just say something that I wrote in the intro. Um, I've kind of been writing this book forever, like even before I was a writer, and I was a closet writer. I think I thought about writing like math, like we all take math class, we can add 2 plus 2, like we can all put a sentence together. And it wasn't until like much later that I was writing at work, and one of my bosses, I was basically doing extra work. I worked at a record company, and I worked in A&R, but I would be helping with marketing plans and all this kind of stuff. So when I moved over to the marketing department, I was like, why am I doing all the same work? And my boss said to me, oh, you weren't supposed to be doing that before, but I just like the way you write. And that was when I realized, like, I thought everyone could write. Like, you have to write a memo, you have to write an email. Like, I didn't think it was anything special at all. But I think back, it's like I loved English class, like, but I didn't really take it seriously. So, at a certain point, I was like hating all my jobs. And I got to a point where I was like, okay, what are you going to do with your life? Because like, you can't like hate all your jobs. Like you have to get a job. So I'm like, I'm already broke. Like my severance has already run out for this job. So let me just try my hands at writing. So I had some friends that worked at Honey Magazine, and my first, it was like write what you know, write what you know. So I wrote this story about women that grew up without their fathers, and I interviewed 3 of my friends. And when the article came out, I had a friend of mine who called me. He's like, "Why didn't you interview me?" And I'm like, "Because like we were actually colleagues." And I'm like, "How would I know your family business?" But when she called me, we said that. That's when I realized, like, oh, you think it's just you, right? And when she called me and said it, I was like, oh, like maybe I could write a book. But it was 2001, I think, or 2002, and I was nowhere near. Like I had just written my first story, right? So I wasn't in any like position to write a book. So it took that many years to like write the proposal and figure out what I wanted to do. And over the years, when I was writing for Essence, I would talk to so many people. You talk about people's families, and one of the people that I used to interview all the time was Regina King. And her father had just passed away, and I would be listening to people and reading stories about people, and I started writing this list of people that I wanted in a book on top of people that I knew. And I just couldn't believe that there were so many different people that looked, I don't want to say perfect on the outside, like their lives were all together, but they were like dealing with the same stuff that everybody else was dealing with. So so my colleague Teresa L. Sanders, when I was writing the book, I was like, I can't do this book without Teresa, because she's the one that gave me the idea to even have a book. So I called her and I was like, you have to be in this book. Like I was like, what am I thinking? I'm actually writing this book because she called me and said, why didn't you interview me? So I always give her credit because she has a beautiful story in the book. And as a writer, as a journalist, you just want to get to your deadline. And I was like, I have to get this manuscript off of my computer. I'm so tired. I'm so drained. And there were 22 essays in the book. And my thought was that I was going to get writers, but I ended up just meeting women that had the same story. So I ended up writing 14 of the stories. And I was like a complete basket case by the time I turned the book in. Yeah. Like, I think I had fallen apart and just didn't know it. Like, it was just so stressful. So I was like, it's in, whatever, fine. So I wasn't even thinking about how it would resonate with people. I just wanted the book done. So when it comes out, it sells out of its first print run. Like, and Joy-Ann Reid, she wrote the foreword. That was, it was a quick ask. She was like, sending it sounds. Basically, Joy had written a story about her father passing away on Facebook. So one of my contributors was like, we're going to get someone good for the forward. So it was like a cold email, and I hadn't even met Joy Reid. So when the book came out, I went to New York. I was like, I'm coming to deliver books to you. We made an appointment, and she gave me a tour of NBC, which is hilarious. And then she was like, I would love to have you on the show with Regina King. And I was like, what? This is when she was doing AM Joy. And that, and then I did Sirius Radio. And like, it just started, like, I couldn't believe it. Cause like, all I wanted was the book to be done. So it came out in June 13th, 2017. And at the time, at that time, not everyone was walking into the marketplace with an Audible. So once the pandemic hit, I have a lot of author friends, and I could see that everyone started having an audiobook with the publication of their book. So I went back to my publisher, and it seemed like there wasn't much interest. So I kind of fought my way through Audible. And I got the Audible done, and we had mostly all the contributors read their own stories. And then the book got another hit in 2013. So then when you reached out to me last July, it's like, it just keeps having a life, which is not something I expected. So that's kind of like the journey in a bit of a nutshell. I'm sorry if I went on different tangents.
No, that was great.
That's how it came to be. So I was telling someone today, I was just on the phone with my nephew. I was like, I have to get off I have to do this Zoom. These women reached out to me last summer, and today is the day. I got to put my lipstick on. I got to go. So that's why this is so special. Like, oh my God, this is crazy. So I thank you for choosing the book. And I want to ask you, like, why did you choose the book? Like, how did you find out about the book, and why did you choose it for today?
Well, I'm always on social media, and it just came across some kind of way. You came across, and I followed you, and I saw the book, and I was like, we need to read this book. And I also want to say, because when I saw the title, He Never Came Home, and I said, okay, interview stories and essays from daughters on life without their fathers. So it resonated with me because I lost my father. And I don't really hear a lot of books, and authors out there dedicating books to fathers, and in this sense, and when you said He Never Came Home, I was like, I wonder, and I thought it was mainly just on death. But when I
Uh-huh.
opened it up, I was so amazed that you covered three different topics. And I said,
Yeah.
"Oh, this book is worldwide." Like, I mean, you're
Yeah.
talking about distance with the loss of the father,
Yeah.
deceased, divorce. Like,
Divorce.
this is good. I said we need to discuss this, and so I'm always looking for different topics and that people can talk about that we don't really talk about.
Hmm.
This book is emotional for people
Yeah.
who have lost their fathers and dealing with things as of now. One of my members told me, she was like, I don't know if I could come on because I just can't, And I
Yeah.
said, it's
Yeah.
okay, I understand, if you can make it, come on. If not, I get it,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And when I was reading, I mean, I was going through it like, okay, boom, boom, boom. Once we got to deceased, I was like, okay, I had to read like one chapter a day. Like, wait a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. But you
It's
know
a
what's
little heavy.
crazy? My
Yeah.
father, who I never met, he died when I was writing the book. I found out. And I didn't even really have an emotion, but I was like, how weird is that? That's crazy.
Yeah.
And I wanted, there were a couple of things that, it took a long time to get it together. Like I said, the honey article, I think it came out I feel like I was writing it around 9/11. So maybe it came out the following, I can't remember. I should remember. But so in the time that it took me to, writing a proposal is just like so painful. It's like, I never liked book reports in school, and doing a book proposal is writing like a book report on like steroids. It's like, so it's really grueling. But during that time, I got a couple of rejections, but during that time I was trying to figure out what the book was going to be. And I didn't want it to be all black men because I didn't want that to be, I didn't want that to be the theme of it. And there's a girl I worked with, a woman I worked with named Bridget Bartlett Broyle. She wrote a letter to her dad. And I remember asking her to be part of the book. Her dad died of cancer when she was like a teenager. And she was apprehensive because she thought it was like going to be like an angry sort of book. I was like, no, I want everyone's perspective. Like, a 13-year-old losing their dad to cancer is different than someone whose parents are divorced and they never saw their father again, which is what Regina King's story was.
Yes.
Different than somebody that was on drugs, like my cousin's in the book, and her dad was just a good person, but had a drug problem and just could not be there. So I wanted it to be different voices. And I remember having to explain to people, no, it's not like he didn't, like, he's a horrible person. No, it's whatever your experience is. So when I thought about how much time it took to do the proposal and then deal with the rejection, I was like, it gave me time to think about what I wanted it to be. And I always wanted someone whose dad was in prison, and I got a young lady whose dad was in prison. And I did, her dad was Muslim, but I wanted different people. I wanted different perspectives because it's not just mine. And the funny thing is, there's a woman in the book, her name is Sarah Tomlinson. And I was reading More magazine, I guess in 2015 or something, because I was always looking for people. Like I said, on top of the Regina Kings, people's story that I knew, I was reading More magazine and I saw this story. It's a woman named Sarah Tomlinson. It was a package about like breaking a bad habit, I think it was. So Sarah's story was that she said something about she was a wine drinker, and she said there was some situation where her father, like, something about like the 10-year riff I had with my father, and like pouring that last bottle of wine down the sink, like, I gotta stop. And I was like, who was Sarah Thompson? So she had a book coming out called Good Girl. I buy her book. She's a white woman from Maine, kind of grew up like in a Little House on the Prairie, back to the land sort of life. And when I tell you, when I read her book, I was in New York at the time. I was almost crying on the train. I was like, I don't even know this woman. And we have the So I just sent her a cold email. I was like, hey, I read your story, blah, blah, blah. I got your book. I'm doing this book. I would love you to be part of it. And it was, I talked to her and I was like, we only met like, I'm trying to think, when did we met at the second book signing I did. And I was like, I was on the train, like this woman, we have the same crazy thoughts. I was like, this is so crazy that we're all connected in this way. And I'll tell you a story from Sarah's book. She talked about she loves music, and she was dating a musician, and I think she lived in Seattle or Portland or something. And she was dating this guy, and he had a show. And after the show, he said, "Oh, I think I'm going to go home. I'm just going to go home." And she thought that was in her mind. She was like, "Oh, he's breaking up with me. Like it's over." And so she's like in her mind, like backpedaling. And the next day, he was like, I was just tired. I needed to go home and rest. It has like nothing to do with our relationship. And when I read that, like you just don't, you're just off. Like you're just off. And I was like, I was on the train, like, oh my God, this woman, and like I remember being on a train, like I was on a C train, like, oh my God, this is me right here. So I just love that I met people who had different lives, but we had this thread of like just not knowing what to do because no one showed up
Yeah.
for whatever
I,
reason,
yeah.
for whatever
Yeah.
reason.
I think that's what made your book so unique to me because you
Mm-hmm.
didn't just think about yourself or your story. You wanted to
Yeah.
share your book with other
Yes.
women that were dealing with the same issue in different ways, but still it was
Yes.
a loss of a father. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what really made your book like stuck out to me.
Oh,
And I
thank
was
you
like,
so much.
wow, this is so wonderful. Everybody needs to read this.
Yeah, I definitely didn't. And even people that haven't, don't have this experience got something out of it, which
Mhm.
I didn't expect that either. I had even my male friends, like one of my really good friends, her name is Nicole Shealy. She wrote about what she learned about men by watching her mother being in not great relationships. And she's the one, if I don't know, I'm trying to think of something to jog your memory. One of her mother's boyfriends like killed their parakeets.
Yeah, that was awful.
Yeah, yeah.
The parakeet and the cat.
Right, the cat disappeared, right.
Yeah.
So she's like my sister-in-law. She's been married to my really good friends for like 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he read the book. He read the book like way after it had come out. And he's like kind of like he's an alpha male, but he's also really sensitive, like when he's over there. And she said that he read her story, came out of the room in tears, and was like, I'm so proud of you for getting through that. And like there are things that he didn't know. So when we were doing the Audible, there's out of the 22 people, I'm so thankful that Joy Reid, she read her forward. I was like, I can't believe she's gonna, 6 years later, she's like, I'll do it. So I think she was probably last, but Nicole Shealy, I think out of the 22 essays, well, one person was deceased. I think I got 18 people to read them. Nicole was first, and she lives in Jersey, so she actually went to the Audible office. She's the one that had like the real like Audible experience. And I called everyone when I was, even if it was like early for me, I called everyone before their session and be like, hey, it's me, good luck. But I didn't listen. I was like, I just wanted to give you some love. I missed Nicole's. I was working. And she called me later. She's like, oh, it went really well. They gave me a tour of Audible. So I didn't hear the whole Audible until it was done. I didn't get to say anything. And when I listened to Nicole, I don't know how many times she had recorded it, but she had clearly already been crying because you could hear her voice cracking when the first words she spoke. And I was like, oh my God. So I think everyone sort of like, it was a therapeutic experience for all the contributors. But I remember listening to her, and I actually haven't, when the Audible came out, I was really proud, but I haven't listened to the whole thing. I listened to one, or I listened to the beginning. And when I heard hers, I was like, oh my God, her first word, you can hear her voice cracking. Like, this is just, and years later, everyone still has this pain. But I'll tell you this too. Desney Butler is the older woman in the book. And she's the one that said, I call my husband motherfucker so much he thought that was his name. Oh my God. Miss Butler unfortunately didn't live to see the book. But you know, when you do a nonfiction book proposal, you have to have allegedly 3 chapters. So I wrote my story. There was a young woman that I knew through a writer friend who wrote her story, but unfortunately she wasn't in the book. And I told Ms. Butler what I was doing, and I was like, you know, I want to interview you. So I went to her house and I sat on the floor and I listened to her story. And that was one of the first ones I wrote. So then, you know, months later, I go back and I was like, okay, I wrote it. Like, I left the room and I came back and she was in tears. So I put her in the proposal. So when I was trying to court people to be in the book, I'd send them the honey story, like, oh, this is the basis of the book. I wrote this story, and you know, that whole thing. And I was like, oh, here's a sample of one of the stories. And every time I sent Miss Butler's stories out, people were like, who is this woman? So she was the one that I used to lure people in. And she was like my grandmother's age, and her sons were my mother's classmates. So I've known Miss Butler my whole life. And yeah, so the person that read her story, I'm like, this is what Miss Butler looks like. And I explained who Miss Butler was. So I dedicated, you know, she's part of the dedication. But when I read her story sometimes, and I'm like, I wrote this so long ago, and it is so good, not because of my writing, but it's like her story was just, it was incredible. And I saw her, she was like a matriarch. I didn't know all of her life like that. And, you know, talking about, you know, going to see her dad and feeling like, you know, everything was good because I was with a man. It was like, oh my, and this was in the 50s, right? This was in the 50s. She was having children. I learned so much about people and how your life paints your outlook and your experiences. So it was a beautiful, hard, emotional ride to get it done.
Yeah. I do have a couple questions. We all have
questions.
Please.
So, please, of course.
Let me just start it off. Fathers, they play a major role in the family unit, but we don't talk about them enough. You know, and I was wondering, you know, why that is. Do you know? Like, what is your perspective on that?
I always think about Chris Rock when he says, you know, the fathers only, what do they get? Like, they get a tie for Father's Day, and then like they get the big piece of chicken. I don't know. I don't know. I saw this thing on Instagram last night. I follow this page called Dear Fathers. And there was a woman talking. I don't know who she is. I just saw this clip, and she was talking about when she grew up, there was just no fathers around. And she's like, like similar to me, she's like, I watched my mother do everything. I don't know. Like when I grew up, I was telling my cousin my cousin's in the book. I remember growing up thinking that men didn't love their families. And it took me years to realize like that's just how skewed my outlook on it was. But I don't know. I don't know. It seems like it seems like it's getting better, and there are more fathers that are, you see more of it now, but I don't know. I really don't. Sometimes I just think they're not around, honestly.
Yeah.
And the fathers that I know, like, all of my friends are great fathers. Like, I don't know any absent fathers. Like, I don't have any male friends that don't support or with their kids, whether they're together with a mother or not. But I think I think people are trying to change, how that looks or what that is for, I don't think that, people want their kids growing up that way, but for a while, I just think that they weren't present.
I think
Or if
they
they,
were present. It's just how can I say, what do you call it? The word that they portray that, like in my neighborhood. I didn't grow up with my father, but in my neighborhood, there were married couples. I mean, I've seen everything. There were married couples. There were couples that were living together. And so it wasn't that I didn't see whatever. It was a broad range of different type of men, and what I mean, there were men who literally stayed. There were grown men who still literally stayed with their mother. And when I was little, I still think that something was wrong with them, that they couldn't, they didn't live by themselves. So even in my adult brain, I still can't figure out as an adult, why would these grown men really want to stay with their mother? Because when my brothers became of age, they left the house. They didn't stay in the house. So to me, that's the norm because that was my household. But even though I didn't grow up with my father, I still think that grown people shouldn't be with their parents, and of which we were talking about at my job, we're talking about different cultures where the adults and the different generations all live together. But in Black culture, my culture, African American, however you want to call it, they don't, as soon as you become of age, you leave out and you don't stay in and build wealth. But at the same time, you see good fathers, but I think a lot of times, I don't know if it's portrayed that you shouldn't be, even the mothers who raise their children, I don't know if they tell them you should be in the household with your kids. Because a lot of times, even they praise men being promiscuous versus ladies being promiscuous. So that to me develops single parents, whatever. You praise it, but at the same time, you allow them to do it. So for me, that's like, oh, or even now, my friends of my age, they're like, I want to be a grandparent. They don't even care if the child is married or not. They just want to be a grandparent. That just doesn't make any sense to me. But everybody is different. Like, even when I read this book, I really like, because I just like to dig in and dive in. I love the stories, but I really want to hear what the father had to say about their view of why they abandoned their family or why they couldn't do. And then as I also read, to me, the common denominator was they're human. Sometimes we give them this superhero and like, oh, you're supposed to be perfect. They're not perfect. Or even with mothers, when we say, why did my mother stay in that situation or whatever? They're human. We're not perfect. We build everybody to be a superhero, be it whether they're a Superman or a Superwoman. We just build that up to them, and we expect that model from not to even break down. Like in some of them, they all had different addictions or whatever it may be, whether it was going from household to household and from women to women. They were all trying to, how can I say, feed a need. But I just related. What I really would like to know is why did the women put up with it and bring into that situation? And then the men, why would they leave their family, or even, how can I say, water all the flower pots that they did, And
oh, that's a good water all the flower pots.
You shouldn't water every flower pot you run into. But I don't know if they weren't taught that. So like with my son, he's 30. I teach him, no, everybody you come into contact with is not going to be your friend forever. So don't just waste your time and energy into that, because that's, to me, is a wasted relationship. But again, in this book, I learned, to me, I always say that the youth has a lot of value. So like in one of the stories, I don't remember who it was, she wanted so much from her father. And I think it was the one who was in jail.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm not
yeah.
sure. And she met a little sister. I'm not sure if it was her or the other one, but she had a little sister who lived in Germany or whatever. And,
Oh yes, yes, yes. She's from North Carolina. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. And she said the little sister, and that's how I felt. It wasn't that I like, oh, I miss him so much. It was like I knew who he was, but at the same time, it wasn't that I expected him to come home. It was like I moved on with my life. When I saw him, I saw him. If I didn't see him, I didn't see him. But in my situation, when my father came into my mother's life, my sister, who's by a different man, she calls him dad to this day. Well, he's deceased now, but I never called him dad. It was just hard for me. He ain't my dad, So I still call him by his name. So it was when he died, I still call him by his name. And what really pissed me off, because it reminded me in this book, his sister be like, "You're just like your dad," and I'd be like, "I'm not like him." I don't say that in my mind. I'm saying like the MF in my head.
Yeah.
But I don't know because I really didn't know him,
Yeah, but, I think it's complicated. The interesting thing you talk about was the men that stay with their families. Like I have some of that too in my, like close family circles. And I remember watching Baby Boy with Tyrese, and I was so pissed. I was like, why is this on the screen? And then I realized, like, oh my God, I actually know people like this. I do, like, I know someone like in my mind, like right now. And like, he had 2 children, like he lives with his mother. He got these 2 girls, and like Yvette, what's her name? Taraji P. Henson. Is that she got a job, she got an apartment, she got a car. And I was like, this is insane. But I think it just, because I don't want to say no one's put their foot down, it continues.
But even in that story, they called him Baby Boy. But
yes,
he's not a baby, and he's not a little boy. And then at the same time, he believed he was the man of the house. And so the boyfriend, Ving Rhames, had to tell him, "You're not the man of the house. You're not even a man." But sometimes in my head, she's still calling him baby. He's not a baby.
Right.
Not a little boy, but he's a grown man. But at the same time, he want to, come back and fight. Like, oh, I'm the grown man. You're not paying any bills. You're not doing anything.
Not paying any bills, taking her car when she's at work. It was like, what do you actually do? I think no one's just put their foot down and said, this is not how we're going to do
exactly.
this. So, I don't know if that's what it is. And then I look at like Barack Obama. It's like, he was like, look at this family.
But he still became great. He was, the male version to me of an absent father, you know what I'm saying? And then, how can I say, his mother passed away, but his grandparents stepped in. So a lot of times,
yes.
So even with my son, that's being a single mother, because when I look in this book, they talk about generation curses. I'm like, okay, here we go again.
Yeah.
When it was like, you're either going to be on drugs, in prison, or a single mother. And I said, well, I guess I got one of those. So
right.
I was like, well, I don't want my son to be that way. I don't want him having, single mothers all over. But at the same time, when I look at it and I say, okay, whatever, it's just, he became great. So a lot of people become great. I'm not sure if it's like, I'm just building to do whatever. So even when I did see my father, he would see things and be like, oh, you can't, you're not supposed to be out in the yard doing yard work. And, in the back of my head, I'm like, whatever, I'm gonna do whatever I want to. So now it's like, it's an urge. I have to have an immaculate grass because you told me I couldn't do it. I'm gonna do it. So it's like, I do the total opposite of what he just said. It's like, you haven't given me any lessons. You just come in here, do whatever you're going to do, whatever. But the lessons you give me is like, everything is for me, a strive to work harder, to do more than what he did. And I don't know. And I never looked at it until I read this book. It's like, I don't know if it's a weight or whatever. So, and then one of the part of the books, it's like, for me, I went to his funeral. It's hard for me to mourn somebody I really didn't know, and then my sister, again, when he was with, my mother had 2 sets of kids. So one of the sets, the last 3 was by my father. So, but my sister, who was in the house, which is so crazy to me, in my mind, I'm still thinking, like, why would you take the time? And he purposely did that to me, not to me in purpose. I mean, to me, he did will raise other people's children as though they were his. You know,
Right.
when he stopped, you know, being around my mother, he again took on another family, but the kids wasn't his, and that's, to me, is crazy. But he took on to my sister. My sister still calls him, well, she's deceased now, but was calling him dad until she died.
Right.
It's crazy to me. It was just crazy to me. So I can't explain it, but it's just crazy to me.
No, but it is crazy. It's all crazy.
Like, it's like,
why
you
don't
have
people
your
taking care of their
biological kids,
Yeah.
but so the first one, my brother was deceased also, but he was his first son, you know, so they both were close in age, my sister, my older sister and my brother, but they still, you know, they called him dad or whatever, but I think it's he ain't a dad. You know what I'm saying? I don't know why I'm calling him that, and I just don't know. And which goes back to the younger generation. They're, how can I say, they say things that the older generation find acceptable. So like in this book, when the young girl, she had told the sister, you know, dad, he's a big child. But at the same time, her older sister was like, she's still trying to find love. And she was like, she's trying to make him do adult things. But the little sister was like, he a child, you know, just accept that he does childish things. I don't care, you know, he the dad, whatever, but he does childish things. But it was, and this is the teenager telling her, and she's listening like, but she's the adult of the situation, but the teenager telling her, like, I don't know why you don't see that he's acting like a child, or his childish behavior. And then also sometimes we can't accept, just because somebody's of age, that they're adults. We'll be like, we expect them to have adult-like behavior, but they still have childlike tendencies.
Right. And I think that, I mean, in defense of men, I think there's a lot of people that don't have tools. So we don't have tools. They don't
Men
have
and women.
certain, So I do see that. And you were talking about doing the grass, being like obsessive about doing the grass. The one thing I've learned too about not having support is like, it breeds hyper independence. And I grew up watching, my mother did everything. So and also I'm an only child, so it's like, if I don't do it, I'm very clear that it's not going to get done.
Right.
But I don't think of that as hyper independence, but it kind of is.
It is.
Like, you go somewhere, and that's what I wrote in my essay. Like, you know, I remember going like, you know, men that want to do stuff for you, like, not as simple as opening a door, but like, I carry my groceries. Like, I have to like take care of myself, right? So if a man, even some of my friends, like, grab my bag, or and I just like, oh right, because it would be the gentlemanly thing to do. But like, if you're not here, who's gonna take it upstairs? So it's like, it really warps how you think about, you know, families are so different now. You don't want to talk about traditional roles, but like, I just think it leaves a hole in you where you're just not sure how things are supposed to be. And I still catch myself like, somebody like I don't, like I said, I don't want to make it simplistic about opening a door, because it's deeper than that. Even some of my married friends,
any help, because you're used to doing it by yourself, you know.
Everything.
It would be nice for you to take my groceries up or whatever and do whatever, but I'm used to carrying it, making that haul myself.
Right.
So any help,
and if I don't carry them upstairs, I don't eat. So I'm not waiting for you. I'm not waiting for anybody to come get my groceries. But I realize that it has warped. And even when I'm with my married friends, like, sometimes I'm with some of my married friends, if it's like me and a couple, I always, Bill comes, like, I always, right? And I've had my female friends be like, put your wallet away. But I'm like, I'm not gonna just assume that he's gonna pay for me, you know. But it's like so many things, like, in my average day, that I'm like, oh my God, there is so much that I've missed. There is so much that I've missed. So I'm, still trying to learn and figure out what tools.
Every day we're learning something new.
Yeah. But someone else that I really wanted in the book was Gabrielle Reese. I think she was one of the last essays. She's someone that I looked up, and I was looking for fatherless celebrities. Like, you need a couple names for the book. and her dad died in a plane crash. And she said, she was another person. I never met Gabrielle Reese. We talked on the phone like twice. I wrote her essay. I sent it to her, and her manager was like, yeah, you got it. But she said something that I never forget. She said, we're all born with different cards, highs and lows, and you have to know which ones to play when. And I was like, yo, that's it. That's it. But, we're still here, right? So we still have to keep going and learn try to catch up on the stuff we didn't learn and put it into practice and try to be better people. But it's been not always easy.
Yes.
So,
Anyone else have questions? I want to hear from other people. Anyone?
It's not so much a question. It's this book was hard for me to get through, so it took me a while. But because my father just passed, it'll be 2 years this December.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry to hear that.
I'm the only girl of 8 boys. I'm the oldest, but I'm the only girl of 8 boys. Right?
Wow.
I didn't meet my bio father until I was 13. And so our relationship started off very, very rocky because, at 13, you're starting to really, smell yourself, feel yourself. I had a very traumatic childhood up until that point. And while the trauma was related to my mother, sorry, my toddler's in the background, one of my toddlers in the background. While the trauma was related to my mother, I blamed him for not being there to protect me from it.
Yeah.
And so our relationship started off really, really bad. But I watched my father and who my father was. And when people ask me now why I'm so kind or forgiving and just give people the benefits, why if I started to treat people the way that they have treated me, sometimes, the world would burn down, but that's not who my father was, right? I never saw my father get out of pocket with people. And I used to be like, why aren't you beating this dude ass? Or why aren't you da-da-da-da? And he would be like, because when I leave this earth, I want to know that I did everything in my power to be better than the people who hurt me or better than the people who did such and such. I can count on my hand how many times I saw my father really step out of character, right? And that's who I try to mimic now in my life, where they be like, why aren't you treating them how they like? I absolutely could. I have it in me to do it. But I tell you, the world will be set on fire, but that is not who I want to be. Sorry, one of my other babies is in my ear. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
I'm like, but that is who I want to be. I was like, I have it in me. Don't get me wrong. But that's not who I'm choosing to be, because I saw who my father was. And when I became an adult, that was my person. It didn't matter what I did, how far I fell, anything that I knew that I could pick up the phone and call him. I knew that I could be my most vulnerable with him. I knew that I could be honest with him. I could be like, hey, Dad, I fucked up. This is what's going on. And he lived in Ohio. He would get in his car and drive here. He was here all of the time. We were there all of the time. And lacking his presence right for these last 2 years has been this weird change, because I don't know how to be. I don't have that ear anymore to bounce ideas off of, to go to when I'm ready to set things on fire. Reading this book was difficult, because I look at my oldest father, and he was a terrible father to her, but I never said a bad word about him to her. I knew he was shit, right? But that was not my relationship to dictate. My mother and everybody would just be like, why you letting her go? Why you letting her call him? Because that is not my relationship to dictate. She has to go through that path in her home. All I can do is be there. All I can do is because eventually she will see who her father is.
Right. And maybe he could be a good father and not a good partner.
Right. Maybe he could turn it around. But then she would hear is my bad talking of him, and that is the impression that she would get. And I didn't want that. And then eventually she did realize that, you know, he wasn't a good person, but that's a path she had to take.
Right.
So to all of these stories was, man, it took me a while because it's one of the things where I felt so fortunate to have the father that I did. But then who would I have become if I had never met him, and would I still have turned out the same way? That's what I was thinking about through this whole, would I have turned out the same way if I hadn't met my father, or if he wasn't that person that he was? Who would I be now? Who would my kids be now?
Right.
So,
can I ask a question? Did he explain or apologize where he had been for the first 13 years?
And he did. Eventually, we did talk about it because I didn't tell him everything that had happened to me when I was younger, and then it wasn't until I was an adult where we actually sat down. And I was in a really bad abusive relationship that I didn't talk to him about. It wasn't until that man almost killed me and I woke up and my father was at my bedside, to where we had to have a coming to Jesus moment where, and then he talked about everything. He didn't know everything that happened to me. He also just didn't know I existed because of my mother. He didn't know I existed until my grandmother actually went to Ohio to see one of her sisters and ran into him and was talking about me, and my granny had a little slip of the tongue, and it opened up this Pandora's box, and that's how he found out. And so, yeah.
Interesting. Well, I'm sorry about your dad, but I'm glad you had that time. You know, I'm glad you had that time. And I'm sorry the book was hard to read. Oh, she muted us. Oh, there you are.
People are starting to show up because we're watching a football game here.
Oh, okay.
Anybody else? Thank you for sharing, Shakina. Anyone else? Questions, comments?
Hey there.
Hi. Oh, Pepsi.
Hey, Pepsi.
So I'm smack dab in the middle of moving. I don't know if you can see, but I'm in the car. I don't know if you can see out of my back window. There's a big dumpster right there.
Oh, now I can.
And
You
I'm
announced
going
it, but I didn't see it.
Pick up a U-Haul, and I'm just like managing all of and juggling all the balls. And so I think this was an amazing book. I did not finish it, but I'm looking forward to finishing. Obviously because I had all the stuff to do, but I think it's a great title, and it's just one of those topics that need to be had. You know, it's just that the conversation needs to be had and discussed. And so there's so much that this book brought out or just kind of reminded me of. I've been taking notes. My oldest daughter, Taya, told me that I need to start writing notes in my phone because I would have all these amazing ideas and, you know, book ideas, just all kinds of ideas. She's like, Mom, you have to stop and just write it down because we get so busy and we're on the hamster wheel and we're just going until we crash. And I think about all the ideas that have passed along with women who are not here because they never got a chance to tell their story because they were too busy
taking care of everything.
Sometimes playing mom and dad, you know, doing all of this. And so I'm taking her advice and jotting down all of my ideas. It doesn't have to be complete sentences. It's just brainstorming. Even if I just get the word there so that it can jog my memory later to be able to, because I have so many books in my head. I have so many ideas and I just don't even know where I would begin to put it all together, but at least I'm doing that part.
That's huge.
Thanks.
That's huge. I have to write everything down too. You have to.
Yes, especially now that I'm perimenopausal. That whole
Life
thing
comes at you fast.
That whole thing, you know, nobody talks about this stuff. And so, but anyway, I digress. The daddy story. So my father was, I guess with my mom until I was about maybe 3-ish or something like that. And I just remember resonating with so many of the stories in the book because he was not, I mean, he was there and it's like, he was my world and, oh, my daddy. But as I got older, I realized he only really came around once or twice a year after he and my mom broke up. And he would come around on my birthday and maybe one other time. And he would take me for a ride around the neighborhood on his motorcycle. And that like made my year. It just, you know, some people say it made my day. No, it made my year. And I would hang on to the next birthday. And later on, as I went to college, I remember, because that's when you know, kind of wake up and have these epiphanal moments and you're now quasi grown so that you can kind of do the things that and not have to ask for permission. And I remember calling him from college because I got angry. Actually, let me back up. I remember getting angry for the first time when I was in 8th grade because my mom, who never really wanted to deal with the legal system and ask for child support because she's just a super giving, wonderful woman, she decided to go to get custody, I mean, not custody, but because they were never married, go to the court so she can get child support. Well, my father was a state police officer, so he knew the tricks of the trade.
Wow.
So he denied me. And back then we didn't have the DNA testing and all of that stuff. And so he denied the fact that he was my father so that he didn't have to pay. And so back then, before DNA testing, I guess you had to just bring pictures in and the judge would kind of look and see. And so, and I'm just going off of the story that my mom told me, but she said because I looked more like my father in the first half of my life than the second. Now I look more like my mom, but back then looked just like him. And the judge looked at him and said, "You ought to be ashamed of yourself, Mr. Carter." Because, you know, whatever.
Wow.
But just the fact that I ended up knowing that story and the fact that he denied me to not have to pay money to help me to do, like, my life could have been different. I also found out later that this same man had like 2 degrees, one of which was in architectural engineering. The same man who would like quit jobs just so that he didn't have to pay child support. So all of those types of things, like, were like, wow, my whole life could have been different. Had you just made some different choices. I remember later on when I got to college, which is where I was starting, that I kind of got to the point where, okay, I didn't need or want for anything growing up. My mom had a whole bunch of sisters. You know, I was provided for. I was loved. I didn't miss anything. And so I just got to a point of being appreciative and grateful for him. And if it were not for him, I wouldn't even be here. So just that thought alone just allowed me to release the frustration of all of whatever. I remember calling him on the phone and I, in a very respectful way, told him my feelings and what I didn't like or appreciate about, you know, whatever. Some people will say I blessed him out, but in the most respectful way. But he allowed me to vent. And so I felt better after that. And so he went on to tell me things that I didn't know, which now as an adult, I realized at the core of everybody's issues or whatever their behaviors are, there's some type of trauma there. There's something that happened that caused you to be who you were as a child. And now you're at this place holding on to this baggage that you don't know how to process because in this society, we don't address it. I think we're getting better at it. Definitely. We're getting better at it compared to what our parents and grandparents and great grandparents had as resources. But, you know, it's still a thing that needs help. But he told me his story and, you know, part of which I got an understanding, but he grew up in a 2-parent household but his mom, he was the second born. He has an older brother. His mom never wanted a second child. And so he used to call himself Cinderfella because all of his life she favored the older child and not him. So he spent his whole life trying to please her and, you know, fill in that hole or that gap of how she favored the older brother and would tell him that, you know, you weren't supposed to be here. So it was like a verbal, mental, emotional abuse thing. And you know, time went on. I don't know what the details are of why the adults argue, but he grew up watching and listening to his parents argue all the time and vowed that he would never stay in a relationship with someone or anyone if it got to the point where they argue. because he didn't want it to turn into that. So I guess when he and my mom didn't agree or whatever, he just bounced and will come around once a year. So that was his story. And he gave me more detail, but all the way up until she passed away, he was the one who took care of her. And the older brother abused her. It's like, it's
Life is crazy.
The classic entitlement. She's, putting all her effort and energy into that one. And then he didn't appreciate it or whatever. And then, and then you've got the son that will do all the things and you could have the relationship with, but you treat him like crap. So anyway, it mentally messed him up. And so much so that he left for Vietnam a year early and forged some paperwork so he can go at 17 instead. And then witnessing, I can't even imagine my sons witnessing what the men in Vietnam had to witness. And then they come back over here traumatized. And, it's just, I don't know. I think a lot of what's going on is systematic. It's systematic and it's generations out. Yeah. And I think about, even though I've never been to Africa or I've never been to wherever the beginning of time started, I think that our ancestors didn't do things like we're doing them right now. And I think everything has been flipped upside down. I think that men and women are not operating in their organic nature. We've been tricked into being somebody that we're not, and acting in a role in which we were not organically meant to operate in. There are so many things and I've mentioned to some of the women here, and I know that this is a hot topic and she's very controversial because, people have certain ways of thinking, but Princella the Queen Maker, some of her ideas that are scientifically and physiologically based make sense to me. And as I look through the scope of her eyes and how she views it, it became very healing for me. It became, and I can see when you learn certain things and when you're smacked with truth, there's something about the truth that resonates and it just sits with you. And it's just like that right there. Whereas when somebody gives you some other information that may not necessarily be true, you might go, I don't know about that. And there's like some discernment having to go on. And there's some, you don't know how to process it really. But when the truth hits you, and the truth is always aligned with your spirit. This has nothing to do with religion. This has to do with the spirit inside of our bodies that is connecting all of us. We're all connected. The same breath you breathe is the same breath I breathe. We're all one. There's a one. And as I got older, I realized that there's the oneness that I've always heard about. Oh, we're all one. We are the world, all that. It resonated differently as I got older. Like, wow, we literally are all one. Not just with other humans, but the dogs, the cats, the trees, the plants, everything that is alive on an atomic level, on a microscopic level, we're all one. And so, and I talk to my children and the kids I teach, and it's like, they love this movie Avatar. I'm like, we're just in our different avatars. That's all. Yeah. That's why I can't be mean to you. That's why I can't do any harm to you, because it's like I'm doing it to myself. And so as I struggle to raise 7 children, 3 boys, after a 28-year relationship, marriage, that was just finalized last year.
You have 7 children?
I do.
Wow, that's amazing. Here, Mom.
And so I was pregnant and or nursing for a decade and a half, like literally, and sometimes simultaneously. And I nursed them all. I homeschooled them all. Not all the way through, but to a certain point. And yeah, it's definitely challenging. But now I sit here trying to figure out how the rest of this is going to look, because I had to recalibrate, and so
how the rest of this is going to look. That's real. Yeah.
Because when you're younger and you're married and the first half was great, but as you get to this point, and now that the legal divorce has happened, all of the dreams and ideas that you painted for the future fade away. And I like to reference that picture on Back to the Future. Remember when they went to the future and changed something? It's like those memories fade out because, Marty McFly or whatever went back and got with his mom. So that means in the future,
Right.
he doesn't exist. So
Right.
as he looked at the picture, the people started to fade away in the picture. So that's what it looks like, when I think of what was supposed to be,
Right.
isn't there anymore. But I want to tie that back into the fatherhood and like men and women and how we're so far apart from each other on what we're supposed to be doing or just what the nature of us is, and how do we do the song and dance with still being human. I mean, and I don't have the answers, but there's this thing called human nature, and I think that we don't know what it is to be human, apparently, because we're not doing a great job at it. and that's where I go back to the systematic stuff that's going on. They're taking the Black fathers specifically away from the family. You put them on drugs, put them in a gang, put them in jail, kill them, whatever, because they know that when a Black man and a Black woman that are both healthy, not toxic, get together, they're going to raise up strong, powerful Black children. Those Black children have the capacity to create not just great families, but great communities. And when you have a Black community that is that strong and powerful, we have the ability to change the entire world, which would then, displace them at the top of Maslow's hierarchy. The pyramid is upside down.
Right.
It's upside down. And we as Black women who are the birthers of humanity, we're at the bottom holding the entire world up. The entire world. And we're tired and we're rising. And that's why I appreciate you for writing this book and inspiring me, because I'm going to write these multiple books that are in my mind. Some of them spawn from, what you have written and some of the stories that I've heard. I got so many ideas just from listening to your book. So I'm just happy to be here with you great women, and appreciating you guys and loving on you all and learning how to love on myself.
Constantly.
I think I'm as strong as I am, and we end up being as strong as we are and having to live more in our masculine state because we watched at this generation, I'm a Generation Xer, we watched our moms and grandmoms have to live in their masculine.
And not really, maybe not even knowing that. You just, like I said, like, I gotta eat, so these groceries gotta come upstairs. Like,
and then when you said that, I was like, yes, that part. Like, you can't explain this stuff. And it's not that we want to be this way. We just don't realize, number one, that we're being this way and that there is a way to be. We're just being. And so when somebody brings something to my attention and they might ask me a question or, and it just throws me for a loop, like, wow, yeah. And I never thought about it. But that is a thing. Like, yes, I need to think about that. And I'm doing all of this stuff and I'm like aging and I'm feeling like, certain like, what is it? Cortisol is it works better in men's bodies than ours because they have the testosterone to fight that and to break it down. All they have to do is like go to the gym or go running or go like do some physical thing. And it breaks that cortisol down and they eat it up. But for us, when cortisol is too heavy in our bodies, it, has a profound physical effect on us. Not just mentally, it's a physical thing. We're not meant to live in that state. So
that's interesting. I never thought of it like that.
Yes. And then you have society where you have all these men that it's this toxic manosphere thing that's going on right now that's become viral. And, it's, I think people just don't understand. We don't understand ourselves and how we operate. I know we're not taught this stuff in school.
Right.
And somebody said earlier about learning things through trial and error. And I hate that we, don't talk about things and because the elders are the cheat sheet, but there's a gap. between the elders and the young people. And when I listen, and I have a love for both. I teach, and then I love being around the elders. And so what I realize is that we're the bridge to, there's a gap. And so we're the bridge for that gap between the elders and the young people, because the young people need the old people and their experience, their wisdom. Because some of that stuff it doesn't get dated. It just continues on. It doesn't matter that the times change or things like that, but there's certain concepts that are timeless. But then the young people need the old people, and the old people need the young people. But the old people don't think they need the young people because, they don't understand what the young people are talking about. They don't understand computers and technology, and they think it's all hogwash, but they both need each other. So that's where we come in. So that's going to be definitely one of my missions. And I enjoy being able to be that bridge between the two. And so, but no, I'm just very grateful for you all, and appreciate this platform, and that we have, the ability to be able to talk to each other. And I think the more and more women come together, especially Black women, I'm not excluding, other races or, nationalities or anything like that, but because I think women as a whole, when we come together, we create, we nourish, we're the glue, we fix things, we solve problems. And it's in our nature to do that. We don't do that, though, if we have been tainted with toxic stuff. So we're not able to do what we're naturally supposed to be doing. And then we have men out here that are disrespecting, and and let's not forget about the ones that are acting like women. How are we supposed to become those strong families? And then I don't want to take up everybody's time, but my brain can go down the rabbit hole. Somebody mentioned something about communal living and just like the nuclear family. I think everything goes back so far. And I think about like back in the ancient times, we all lived together and were very communal. There were like huts where the entire family was in one hut. There were no walls. Everybody did everything together. Mom, dad, auntie, uncle, sister, brother, like everybody was right there. And there was a separate house for, that mom and dad would go to procreate or whatever. And even that was on a schedule based on the moon and the stars and, different things that happen and the cycles. We were into cycles and timing and things like that. But outside of that, like everybody was together. At a certain age, the teen boys would have to go through rites of passage. They'd have to go out with the men folk to learn how to become a man and how to deal with that animalistic side of himself, because by nature, men are territorial. They could be violent, they could be, but they had to be, because they have to go deal with lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, right? And so and they have that energy to be able to do those things. And if you hold that in, it can become destructive. It can become destructive. And so when I hear the stories about women who are abused, because these men don't have role models, they don't have people, other healthy men, I have to make sure I keep putting that word on there, to teach them how to manage the animal. They can't. So if they don't have something constructive to do and to put that energy out in the world in a positive and productive way, then it ends up staying inside and becoming toxic, especially when you put it around the music lyrics and the just all of the stuff that this society is, it spills over into the relationships. And then, you have these women who have not been trained also, because I'm not letting anybody off the hook, but everybody's on the hook. But there's reasons behind why everybody's acting the way that they are. And it doesn't start with us. It started somewhere else, but we're having to deal with the residual effects of it all. And so I think this is a great way to start the conversation. I think a lot of people are having this conversation. I just would love for it to continue. even though it goes off to so many different directions, having the conversation is very, very important. And it's important that we don't stop having the conversation. Keep having it with family members, with friends, and talking about it, because we need this kind of stuff to go viral just to wake people up. Because there's stages to this thing. Women are rising, and it's going to probably be several hundreds of years before we get to a point where there's some type of change, but we have to keep having the conversation.
Right. I agree.
Because the stages, we got to wake up first, and then we have to change and fix and solve our own issues. And then we have to move out into the community to start doing that and helping each other. So,
I concur. And keep writing.
Every time I talk to somebody, they've been saying this like for as far back as I can remember. Back before we even had like Instagram and like all that, it was, you need to write a blog. Oh, you should write a vlog. You do a vlog, and you should get an Instagram page. Oh, you should be a public speaker. Oh, you should. And I want to do all those things. It's just, I have 7 children. So, and now, I'm divorced. So
you got to build a family business.
Yeah.
Well, that's the goal, to create a family bank. So
keep going, one step at a time, one thing at a time, one step at a time.
Well, let me just finish moving out of this house first. That's step 1. Can check that box. That's going to free up a lot of my time. So.
Thank you for sharing, Pepsi. Lisa, Stephanie, anybody? Go ahead.
I had a question. I was just curious, how has your relationship, and I know your father's deceased, but how has it changed since writing the book with your father? I know you can have a relationship like in spirituality and in your relationship as you see him as a person. How has it changed, if at all, since writing the book?
That is a really good question. That's a really good question. I will say that the really weird thing to me is that when I started getting contacted by people on that side of the family, because I don't know any of them, and it made me really uncomfortable. It's like, what do you want to talk to me for? Like, you know how old I am now? Like, there's like that ship has sailed. And I would say, and I wrote it at the end of my essay. It was like, when people pass away that you don't know, it's like you wish them a safe journey. And I don't really feel like I don't know anything. So I don't feel anything. It's like an indifference. It's like a strange indifference. And I think sometimes I wonder, like, I can't remember who said my life would have been different. Like, I think about if it was, I don't know if it's necessarily my father, because I have no idea who he was. But like, I wonder what my life would have been like if I had a father. But do I put that on this person that I don't know? I don't know. But I don't think it goes beyond, like, I wish he had a safe journey. I still gotta be me. I still gotta go get my groceries, right? Like, I feel like this stranger, like, almost like put this shit on me that, like, and that makes me angry. And I remember when I was a kid, my mother said that she was angry that she felt like somebody else made her a statistic. And I'm angry that somebody I don't know put weird shit on me. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense, because it reminds me of like the generational trauma. It's
Yeah.
generational. It's in the DNA. And I recently heard somebody explain this. Who is it who's the lady that's been talking about PTSD or post-traumatic slave syndrome?
Ooh.
And how they did a test in the lab with lab rats or mice or something. And what they did was they put the mice in the little cage, and on the bottom of the cage, there were like these electrical nodes that they would shock the mice. So the mice were like jumping in the cage. And after a while, when they would do that, they started infusing the room with the smell of lavender. And so every time before they shocked the mice, they would put the lavender in the room.
Yeah.
And so then so they stopped not electrocuting, but they stopped shocking the mice, and they would put the lavender smell in, and then they would start jumping, even though they didn't feel the electricity.
Sensory.
So
yeah.
fast forward, the mice had babies. And when the babies were exposed to the smell of lavender, even though they had never been exposed to the electric shock, as soon as they smelled the lavender, the mice started jumping. The babies started jumping.
Right.
So that was proving that the generational trauma is having an effect on us. We're doing things and we're acting in ways that we don't even realize what we're doing, how we're thinking. It's just natural. And then when we watch our parents who are still acting in the same way from their parents, it's like, so at some point, I think, again, it goes back to this conversation of counseling, but not necessarily in the traditional way. I mean, I think I'm not saying that's neither here nor there, go to counseling, but this, to me, women talking about it, talking about our stories, sharing our stories, healing from it, and being able to first get an understanding of the what and the why, what happened back then, so that we can, because somebody, in order for the future generations to not be affected by it, somebody has to eat that. Somebody's gotta put that in our mouth, chew it up, and swallow it, and poop it out. Some people, they chew it up, they spit it out, and then it gets on somebody and it's contagious and it keeps happening. Somebody has to understand it to its core and just really deal with the emotion of it all and the generational trauma of it all. So that we can turn the tables back around and have a positive effect on the next generations.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to unpack, and that was a really good question. I haven't really thought about that. That was a really good question. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot, and I like the what do you call baby mice? I don't know, like the little mice that they're the smell. Yeah, that's a great analogy. And I don't know. I guess it's my life's work to like figure out how to, I don't want to say get over it, but
navigate through.
Yeah, and I don't mean to. And I just said this to one of my friends the other day. It's like sometimes my default is indifference. Like I got to keep moving. I got to keep moving. But yeah, I think sometimes if any feeling that I feel, it's a strange sort of like anger that somebody put something on me that it's like, what do I have to do with whatever that was? But it affected my life. And that doesn't sit well, but what are you gonna do with it? I don't want to say the story is over, but he's gone. And you know what too? Has anyone seen the movie Exhibiting Forgiveness?
I'm gonna write it down though.
Yeah, it just came out on the 18th, and it's Andre Holland, isn't it? Andra Day and Anjanou Ellis, and it's about a father that's I don't want to. If no one's seen it, I don't want to give it away. But I saw it. I've seen it twice. I got a link to it, and then I went to the theater to see it. And
it's at the movie theater.
Yeah, it just came out on the 18th, like
Oh,
last
okay.
weekend. And it's like just watching without giving, I don't want to give anything away, but I will say that there was a point in my life where I was like, I don't even know you. I am really not happy with how you treated my mother. You left my mother. My mother was, I'm sure everyone read my story. My mother was married for 2 years. And then my father like played basketball or something. It's so funny when I used to watch Love and Basketball. I think my father played basketball in France or something. But I remember watching Love and Basketball. I remember when she went over to Spain to play basketball, and I was like, I remember sitting in the theater like, is that what that looks like when you go play overseas? Like, oh wow. Like, I was like, this is, and I like that was a small part of that movie, but I remember looking at it like, oh, you play overseas. Oh, okay. And like now it would be like the WNBA going to play overseas, but I never really thought about it. So when I think about like, wow, you left my mother with a kid. And it's not about money, right? You didn't send her, you didn't support, like, so when I think about it like that, it's like, I don't have any thoughts. Like, you owe my mother an apology because I don't know you, right? You owe my mother an apology. So that to me that used to like really make me angry because it's like you're a stranger to me, but you knew my mother. You were married to my mother.
Mm-hmm. This has
So
reminded me a little bit. So when the divorce happened, and I don't want to go all into these details, but like my children wouldn't talk to me. They slowly come around because of how everything played out, and I still have 2 children that really don't want to be bothered with him at all. And one of my daughters, she just refuses because she doesn't like the way that because of how he treated me and
right.
the theme, of me not doing the gaslighting that went on of me not doing enough and how I need to do more and like all of that. But as they got older, they realized what they were seeing. They were, that what they were hearing from him was different from what they were experiencing in the household. And so they, people, I don't think adults or parents think about what happens when the kids get older and start having their own mind and their own opinions about things.
Yeah.
And so
I had a friend once one of my friends said to me, I don't think men realize that children grow up.
Yes, that facts.
Yeah. And I never thought about that. Yeah. When she said that, I was
we
like,
forget
wow.
Too.
Yeah.
And we know it's happening, but because we're hands-on, usually most of the time. But yeah, and to this day, she really does not want to be bothered with him. And I hate it because she needs him. For all the reasons
that we're sitting here talking about.
For all of those reasons. And so I don't want her to end up choosing somebody or finding somebody to fill the void of dad. And so I'm trying to clear off some stuff from my life and just kind of clear some things out so that I can work with that situation some more. The boys are all grown pretty much now, or at least legally. But I think the system and the legal system really don't have a place. And I could take this on a whole nother tangent with this whole legal system thing, because I've had conversations with people who are religious even. When you take the Bible and what it says about marriage, what it says doesn't have anything to do with paper. And the system that we live in has us kind of trapped in this legal system. Because, like, I'm still dealing with the aftermath of the divorce. with my own attorneys. And what I begged him to do was not put us in the system. Let's do what our great grandparents did. Like, we can handle all of this ourselves. And like, I think about them and how they jumped a broom or tied a rope in a knot. I mean, a knot in a rope. I mean, and then you were considered married. And as I went through this legal process, what I learned is that this legal system isn't for us. It's all about commerce. At the end of the day,
I think it's also to protect children too. Like, I don't want to generalize, but like, if people separate, women would be like stuck with children with no support. I think that maybe was. I think it was to protect women and children initially.
I agree with you. I definitely do. I think there are pros and cons. There are definitely those are the pros that, allow people to buy in, for sure. But again, you have to go backwards a little bit more and think of, and this is what always takes me back to the things that Priscilla talks about, is with the nature of man. So the nature of man is why somebody would have to be protected in the first place. Now, I'm not talking about the ones that know how to control themselves and, things like that. Because again, I think that healthy men and healthy women, when put together, have the ability to change the world in a beautiful way. And just what we're seeing in today's times are just the residual effects of all the things that happen to us systematically and generationally. And so I see the patriarchal society that we're living in is it's just having damage on the people. It's just it's not healthy. And so I'm just going to do my best to do the best that I can and contribute the way that I can that will be most helpful for all parties involved.
Right.
Men, women, and children.
That's all we can all do.
Yeah.
But when people ask me if I want to get married again, give me a rope and a broom.
You're hilarious.
I had another
a rope and a broom.
On this theme. Do you have any stories, or do you know of any men who've read your book who were absentee fathers, and as a result of reading the stories, maybe changed their trajectory?
That's a great question.
I don't think so. I had a friend tell me he read my book, and he didn't know, like, he knew I was writing the book, but he didn't know, like, my story. And he said, I remember I sent him the book and he read my story first. And then he said, it just made me want to be a better man. But that wasn't about him being a father. He just said, he said, and I didn't ask him what he thought. He said, I remember him calling me and he read like the last two sentences of my story. And he said, wow. And then I said, oh, like, you read it? He said, yeah. And it made me want to be a better man. Yes. But I can't think of any, like I said before, in my friend group, I can't think of any men that I know that aren't present in their children's lives. And I have had some people reach out to me, but I don't think I've had that. Like, I'm not there for my kids. And I don't think I've had that I can think of.
I told my sons that I was on, they walked past and I'm like, I'm on my book club and this is the author and this is the name of the book. And like, I'm all about, I believe in the yin and the yang, the balance, and giving kids a frame of reference. Because if you only teach them one side of something, then it's like a universal law or something where you go out and you want to see what's on the other side of the fence. The grass is green, or like, kids that grow up one way, they want to go out into the world and end up finding out what's on the other side of that. And then they make their decision. So as I raised my own children, I did my best to kind of give them both sides of things and let their own critical thinking skills and logic kick in to determine what made the most sense. And so I love that. So I told my sons, I would love for you to read this book because it's about, you know, from the woman's perspective of how they felt, or, you know, and these, you know, the different scenarios from he just wasn't there, or maybe it was a divorce, or maybe, but I would love for you guys to read it just to get that opposite side, like that other frame of reference. Because, you know, when you grow up and you make choices, you make decisions, and it ends up one way. But maybe if you understand both sides of something, it can direct your choices better. Because if you can see the outcome, and I've often showed my sons like videos of men on YouTube, because, you know, it's like things that I want my sons to learn and know that they weren't getting from their dad. So I have to find other men in the world, and thank goodness for YouTube. And so I would let them listen to the stories of some of these men who are like in their 40s and 50s. And the title is like, I wish I had a known, you know, or man, if I had had this information when I was 18 or 21 or whatever, my life would be completely different. So if I allow my sons to hear that from just different men, then maybe they'll understand, or maybe they will make different choices if those seeds are planted. So as they go through life and they find themselves in these situations or predicaments, they'll remember like, oh, this is what my ego would want to do, or this is what my pride would have me do. But I remember hearing those men, or hearing how all of that ended up turning out. And I don't want that result. So let me pause for a moment, you know, assess the situation, maybe ask for some guidance and assistance even, and then make a choice. So my children will be reading this book.
Oh, thank you.
The girls and the boys, you know, and I have motives, and I always let my kids know, yes, there is a motive.
I appreciate
it's for
that.
you to learn. So.
Wait, there's someone who's in the corner with a bookshelf behind them. Have I heard from you? You, yes.
Hi, Regina. Oh
Hi.
my God.
I was like, there's somebody I'm missing. Hi.
And all my books. I love my books. I think just this is profound that this is occurrence. So Tanisha, thank you always for creating such a sacred container for these conversations. I feel like each time I've ever been in them, I leave better, if that makes sense. I'm like,
That's
yeah,
good.
my humanity is a little bit more intact because of it.
Oh,
And
wow.
Regina, first of all, I haven't gotten through all of it, and to be touched as much as I am already, I'm like, oh my God. And it's for so many different reasons, which is why you hadn't heard from me. Like, I'm like taking this stuff in. This conversation is ridiculously profound. I'm like, oh yeah, let me write this down. But I, like at the very beginning, I was thinking of the connective tissue, like that fascia.
Oh yeah.
Right? And how even in how you broke down your book with, like, I think it was distance,
divorce and death.
and and death, or
deceased, yeah.
deceased, yeah. And how in all of that there's this and I kept playing around, and this is another reason I hadn't talked. I was like, what is the word that I want to use? Because it's not even less necessarily loss or grief or any of those things, but there's this space, right, in each of those stories, and then also in each of the categories of those stories, and how the space in there then impacts us, and then how we show up as a result of it. But you've created a space for these stories to be told and shared and essentially have their breath, right? Because I feel like it's not a get over, it is that get through. And the assignment, if you will, is like this integration. It's like, how do I harmonize this shit? I didn't ask for it. I didn't do it. I didn't go get
How
it.
do I harmonize this shit? That's a t-shirt.
It's here. So now what? Now what? And then I also myself, like, my parents were married for 43 years. You know, they got married in 1964. They were born in the 40s. I'm the youngest and the only girl of the six. So it's 5 older brothers. And then seeing that through a different lens just by reading the stories, you know, seeing my father and how he was there and he wasn't, right? He had his challenges with alcohol and what that did, right? And then what I learned also, like the ways in which I learned to put up with certain things. or not see them, hyper whatever, hyper independent, hyper pleasing, all the things you learn for survival, right? And then also looking at each one of my brothers and how I love them so deeply and they love me deeply. So I humanized them from the start. But one of my brothers who struggled with drugs probably my whole life apologized to me recently. And I took a moment because I didn't even know I needed an apology.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
But apologizing because of the way in which you just had to figure it out. Like you said, I still gotta carry my groceries up because the fuck, like, who's gonna do it? And you're still my brother, and so I love you, and that's all, whatever, right? But I got 19 nieces and nephews, so they fathered, you know, and the ways in which I've gotten to hold both sides of that, being an auntie, you know, like I know how mad she is at you, and I know why, and I get it, and I know how you got to why you are how you are and what happened to you, this systemic stuff, you know, that FC was talking about. And so it's like it's overwhelming in a really powerful and beautiful way.
Yeah. That's a good way to, I feel that still.
You know, and it's like not with the answers necessarily, but the orientation is shifting. And then also the other thing I was thinking about, like the ways in which a program, right? Like systems don't happen, they get designed with the gender and all of that. So there's a programming that has occurred, and these conversations are allowing us to disrupt those grooves that are just, you know, on instant play or whatever. And like the science part of it, like the actual neuroplasticity of it all, like we can impact that. And you're doing it. So thank you. Salute. These are the ways that we do it. So all of that, I'm gonna be thinking and writing because of you and this.
Oh good. I'm so glad. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, you sound like a writer.
You totally do. No,
that was what I just heard was a table of contents. A couple of chapters.
Writing,
a couple of chapters,
you just have
right?
to do it. You just have to do it. And it's like, if it's about, because I'm trying to work on my next book project. God help me, please. And it's like, it's taking a long time. I can't get it together, but like, you still have to, like, you think about it, you write a little bit, but like, you just don't stop. You know what I mean? Like one of my friends, my Huggins Lassiter, her father was a Black Panther. She was one of the last essays in the book. And I saw her husband, like when I was trying to do the book, and he's asked me what I was working on. I was telling him I'm working on the book, but you know, back and forth. And he was like, yeah, but like, if that's what you need to get done, you may put it on the back burner for a second, but you don't not finish it. You don't stop. So I say to all of you that are trying to write or have these ideas, just write it. I have a notebook everywhere I go, whether you're writing it and, you know, and I send myself emails sometimes, but I'm not good at like notes, but just write it down and keep, you know, you'll go back to it. So I hope if I inspired you to do that, like that's even better. Just,
you know, this is inspiring me to like find a house or some type of like retreat type place to invite women to come and have sabbaticals.
Whatever that is, whatever that looks like.
Like, let's collaborate.
Women that are like me on the hamster wheel, and the only time it's going to get done is if you leave the house. You have to not just leave the house, but you have to leave the city and the state.
Oh, I'm always escaping.
And because if you're in the state, if you're in the city, even, you know, if somebody calls you, we as moms and, you know, wives and mothers, we're going to just go. We're going to get in the car and go solve the problem. We're going to we're not. People constantly tell me, you need to take a break. You need to take a break. You need to take a break. And as soon as I book that like 1 week trip to go somebody, everybody's like, well, where are you going? Why are you going? Why are you going so long? And it's like the tug of war that goes on. And so I'd love to be able to create that retreat space for women like me, because that's what I need. That's what I needed, and that's what I need. And I like giving gifts to people of stuff that I need. I realized that a long time ago when I would go to baby showers or birthday parties. And then people, you get gifts and then you're like, you don't know what to do with them because, you know, I give the gifts that are the things that I need, things that I want. And so
I'll say this, even if I go to the park a lot to read and think and overthink and write. Sometimes, I mean, like, I'm always like trying to escape and go someplace. I live in California now, so like I'll drive up the coast. But sometimes it is as simple as just going to the park and like looking at the squirrels, and like you don't have to escape all the time, because I always say like the answers are in the park. But so much comes to me when I'm just sitting next to a tree, like, okay. I did a lot of writing at the park, at the library. Like, one of my friends used to always say, wherever you go, there you are. So it could be, you could be writing, like sometimes I write in my car. Like I'll go to a coffee shop or something and I'm just like, you know what, I'm just gonna sit here. And so it could be anywhere. But I love a retreat too.
Yes. Well, I know for me, I got to get away because there's too many. I'm outnumbered. I'm way outnumbered.
That is true. But I would suggest that, you know, you just have to keep going.
Yes.
No one's coming. As much as I would love for it to happen, no one's coming to write my next book proposal. I've been waiting, but no one's coming.
Yes. So when I create my retreat, I'll invite you guys out.
Please, yes. Please,
that's one thing on my bucket list.
Do that.
I want to give
a shout out. Favor everyone? Oh no, you go.
Oh no, real quick. I just wanted to give a shout out to Stephanie because she did just write her book. We'll be discussing her book in December. Yeah. What was the name of the book? It's Witch. I know that, but tell them about your book because we'll be discussing her in December.
You put me on the spot.
Oh yeah.
It's Witch Voices. And that one, I'm actually in it. I helped to doula it. I'm not the author, so it's 33 sacred voices, but it's women in tune with conscious healing. Essentially, whatever that thing that people call witch in you, right? Because there's a myriad of stories, which I love, because I was like, I'm working through like the fact that I grew up a Jehovah's Witness and like this magical thing, like that's always been demonized. What do you mean talk about this? But essentially, again, that connective tissue of like, there was an injury to your inner child at some point.
Yeah.
And shows up like this. So what happens when you dare to go back and befriend her and ask her what she needed at the time? You know, and I got chill bumps because I think maybe the youngest was a former, because I was a teacher for 20 years. So that was like my actual career. One of my my students from like a high school class I taught is now 28, I think. And so she was the youngest voice in the book. And then the eldest, I believe, was 78. And
wow.
Right. Just the beauty of being able to put that in a space to let it breathe. And I got to be on that journey. So I'm grateful. And thanks, Tanisha. So
what's the name of it? Hold it up again.
Witch Voices.
Okay.
Women in Tune.
And you said December?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and Tanya D. Parker is actually the editor, and really she curated that entire process. She got a download, upload, however, you know, you think of it, that spark. And it was like, you need to do this. And that was a few years back for her. And so I was a new kid on the block when she was like, hey, I want you to be a part of this. And then that turned
good. That's exciting.
But that was really Tanya, and she's in Maryland. She's phenomenal. The kind of spaces that she holds for people is just beautiful.
Yeah. And where are you? Where is everybody?
From Chicago, but I'm currently in Jersey. I've been on the East Coast the last 6
years. In Jersey. Okay. And where's everybody else?
Chicago. Yolanda is in Ohio.
I'm from Detroit. But
you're in Ohio. Oh, okay.
I transplanted to Chicago. That's how I met Tanisha. And then
got it. Okay.
Ohio.
Okay, because I was like Central Time. Who am I talking to? I don't remember. But I wanted to ask a favor, if you don't mind, and I forget to ask people. I would love if you would leave a review on Amazon or Goodreads, or and if you do both, it can be the same review. I don't care, but I would love that. And it just having these kind of conversations, like I said, there was a point where I was like, get this off of my computer. I have to hit send. Oh, let me just say too that I was late. I was late on delivering. So I think I probably went crazy during this book. So it came out it was published in June, on June 13th, 2017. And to be talking about it with women from different parts of the country in October 27th of 2024, it warms my heart. It really does. I'm almost like teary, but I don't want to be crying. So I thank you it means the world.
Those are healing
Thank you so
tears.
much. And thank you for sharing it with your children. Thank you for sharing it with your friends. And it just means the world to me. It really does. And I'm not sure how I'm still working on my next book, but I don't want it to be as heavy, because I still carry that with me, because it was really, and I was working, and I was working at Essence, and I was writing cover stories and doing all this work and this book, and it was really hard. So when I see that it still resonates and it matters to people, it's very rewarding, because it was not easy. So I thank you again. And thank you to all your sisters. I know some of people had to go, but I really
want to say I'm proud of you.
Me too.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm so very proud of you, and I'm proud of all of you. Both you wrote your book, but I'm proud of all of you, because I know that we don't give ourselves enough credit, and we don't pat ourselves on the back.
Yeah.
And we're always doing all this. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. I appreciate
the great
it.
work. Yep.
Thank you. And I'm proud of you and your 7 children, and getting through your divorce and getting a new house.
Yes.
And for all of us that are still carrying the groceries, whether it's someone's helping us or we're dragging it upstairs ourselves, we gotta eat.
Yes.
So I thank you all.
Yes, and Regina, if you want to join us when we discuss Stephanie's book, I'll definitely send you the Zoom so you can read it.
I'm following you on Instagram, right? So posting.
Thank you for following us. So if you want to join us, you can be our special member for the day. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Because it's going to be definitely a deep discussion, and I think it's going to be really good because it's the end of the year, so kind of motivate us for the new year. So we're so excited. But I just want to say thank you for just joining us, taking time out your day to come on and discuss this book. And I think everybody needs to get this book. For real, like the kids, the men, everybody needs to read this book, because like y'all said, this discussion needs to be had. And again, her name of the book is He Never Came Home: Interviews, Stories, and Essays from Daughters on Life Without Their Fathers. All right, so I gotta wrap it up for today.
It's such a healing book. It's such a healing book.
Thank you. Wait, I'm gonna Tanisha, come back on. I want to take a picture of the screen with your
okay.
Yeah, okay, there you are. All right. Oh, wait, it went back to Stephanie. Say something for it to come back to you, right, Tanisha?
Oh, okay.
Okay, there you are. I wanted to get a picture of the
background.
Yeah.
That is kind of cool. How'd you do that?
I have no idea, girl. I just be doing all kinds of stuff.
It's cute. It's really cute.
I be on social media. I'm just trying to try new things, and I don't know where this came from. I was like, okay, let's put it up. I don't know, girl.
Everybody got a picture that we
wasn't
took.
just me.
I got you. I can show you some.
I appreciate all of you. Thank you. Have a beautiful Sunday. You
too.
Thank you. This was really I got up, I went for a walk, and I was like, I have to come back. I have to put take a shower, put my makeup on. So it was a thing for me. So I appreciate
and definitely when you have your next book, we'll have you back on with us.
Yes. Oh my God. Keep me in prayer. And Stephanie, I know you said you grew up a Jehovah's Witness. I'm taking prayers from every God, like Allah, Jesus, like Buddha, everybody.
It all works.
Yeah, all of it. Thank you so much. Have the most beautiful Sunday.
Yes,
and
you too.
all of that. Thank you.
You too. Have a good one,
Bye.
ladies.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.